Hi everyone! Today we're going to talk about printing your data from your programs and specifically format strings. So basically how to be able to look at things like variable values in your programs by having it output to your main console. So a lot of the time, whether you're debugging your code and you're trying to see what particular variables are within your code while you're running it to see what's breaking, or at the end of a program when you're trying to see what the final output is to evaluate what you did, you'll want to be able to print out your output or to display it on the screen. Now to do this, Python has a particularly simple function called print, and print will print whatever thing or things you give it. So you can have it print hello, and that will just print hello. If you want to print more than one thing, say your number is and a number, then it will print those and it will put a space between them. Now this works well for some basic things, but if you're trying to print something in a particularly nice way, say you want to have an exclamation mark at the end of this, let's write that as an actual exclamation mark, you'll notice you get this space that looks kind of gross. And for some things you might want to try to stick those strings closer together by using string addition, but you'll notice that these two things are different types, so we can't just stick it together that closely. We'd have to convert our number into a string, then it just takes a while and is kind of gross. So our way of dealing with this, that we have different types of data that we want to print out and they have different representations that can sometimes be hard to glue together, is to use format strings. So what we can do instead is we can say print your number is, and what we're going to do is we're going to leave a placeholder for where we want to put in that number. And we're going to do that with curly braces, and then we can type in this format function, which is a function for any string. And within this, you can give as arguments things that you want to put into the placeholders. So here we can say that we want the number 4 to go in to where those curly braces are. If we run this, it will put the 4 exactly where we want it. We can give this multiple arguments. If we do multiple arguments, it's going to assume that it has the right number of things in this format function right here. So if we have 2 sets of curly braces, it's going to expect that there are 2 things in that format function. If you just give it 1, it'll throw an error. If you wanted to use one thing more than once, then you'd be able to do it by giving the argument number right in here. So we have our arguments indexed from 0, so we'd have like the 0th argument, then the first argument, and the second argument. And if we want to have something print more than once or in a different order or something like that, then we can just give that argument number in order to have it so that it doesn't complain about not having enough arguments. And we can do this with more than one argument if we want to, so we're going to also reference that first, which is actually the second here. And that allows us to print multiple things in different orders. Now there are a lot of different specific things that you can do with these format strings. They can represent all sorts of different kinds of data, but for particular types of data, there are specific additional pieces of information you can give within the curly braces to tell it how to represent a long number. So for instance, if we had the number 1 divided by 3, that's 1/3, but in a decimal format that's got a lot of digits, which is not necessarily the nicest thing to print out ever. So what we might want to do is have it print out just the first 2 digits after the decimal point. And we can do that using formatting. And the way that we do this is we give this argument as before, and you can see there's no commas splitting this, so it's just going to treat this as one number, or one argument. And then here, we can put a colon, and then we can put some information about how we want this particular data to be represented, or how we want it to be printed out. In this case, what we're going to say is that we want 2 digits after the decimal point, and this right here is sort of shorthand to tell it that. And you can look up way more information on the Python website for how to do these format strings. And we're going to say that this is because this is a float, so we have to say F so it knows how to interpret this. If you're using multiple different arguments, you'd put the 0 or the 1 or whatever right here to specify which one you're referring to. So it goes before the colon, and then after the colon is where you put the information about how to specify it. If we do this, then it will print out the right number of things. Now the nice thing is that this actually also does rounding for you. So if we do this for 2/3, it's actually going to round those 6 extendeds up to 0.67. And this is a really convenient thing. Typically when you have defaults like this, it'll just truncate it and throw away all the digits afterwards, but this can be really nice when you're trying to print out short form output. There's a lot more information online that I encourage you to look up if you want to use these kinds of things, and you'll see them in future exercises that we have in class. But I think that's it. Thank you very much.